What's up, G.I. Joe fans and Third Wave Sabotage community? Tim here. Today I want to talk to you about my Dreadnok diorama right here. I've got one here. I've got Dreadnok diorama 2 down here. I've got a Cobra base over there. I'm working on a snow theme as well. But today I want to focus on the Dreadnok one. I want to talk to you about kind of how I set it up, the different elements I used, and then just sort of what was in my mind as I imaginatively put this thing together and was thinking, okay, what will be happening in this scenario as the Dreadnoks are gathered back at maybe their swamp headquarters. So I'm going to flip the camera around. We'll zoom in and show you some close-ups of the different sections. Then we'll have some wide angle shots so you can see what that looks like. And I'll talk through the different elements of what I used to make it, because I did it on the cheap. And I think you can do dioramas on the cheap if you don't want to spend a ton of money. I realize money is a challenge, and maybe you want to spend it on a figure instead of the diorama. There are ways to do it. So let's flip the camera around and get to it. Let's start off here and just give you a full rundown end to end so you can see what it looks like. So as far as the base of this whole thing, I didn't build it right on my shelf. What I built it on was just a very basic piece of cardboard. So, I took a piece of cardboard from a box I had gotten. I cut it so it would be the depth of the shelf and the length of the shelf. And I put everything on top of that. I haven't had any issues. If you're worried about anything that you put on top of it, maybe seeping through into an expensive shelf or table, maybe you want to double up or triple up the cardboard. But end to end, I just used a piece of cardboard and built everything right on top of it. Starting down here on the far left, we've got Zartan and his brother and sister. So we got Zarana here, we got Xandar there. Obviously, you can tell this is the version of Zarana that I just think looks better. I think the other one's just goofy looking. So a little bit more expensive maybe to score one of those. But yeah, I think it's just a better looking Dreadnok overall. And I will tell you, the Dreadnoks are the first thing I got when I got back into G.I. Joe. I had some of the figures still, but I wanted to fill out the Dreadnoks first. They've always been my favorite sub-team, if you will, of G.I. Joe, the Real American Hero line. Okay, so I've got 2 swamp skiers. This one still needs some stickers in the back, but I kind of like that it doesn't have it, because it's like, okay, some of the swamp skiers are a little bit more refined. Some of them are a little bit more worn down. For the shelter here, for the roof, I used cardboard basically. So I just tore it open, and in the middle of the cardboard, you've got the that's why I call it corrugated cardboard. It's got that kind of up and down wavy thing. And so now it just looks like a black, maybe tin roof or something like that. Up on the top here, I've got some real moss from real trees. So this comes off of rocks and such in the granite state here in New Hampshire. So it comes off granite really easily. Some sort of, I don't know if it's a fungus or what exactly it is, but it grows in like kind of sheets. And then this is just regular moss. This has been here for probably 9 months, and you can see it's still green. So it's not like it turns brown really quick. For the house, what I did is I just bought a ton of little dowels. You can see 1, 2, 3 there right above the door. But I just bought a ton of them, and I made 4 sides of the house, and then I glued it together. Threw a little black paint on there, some gray, just to show like it was a little bit worn. I will say this is part of the learning curve. As you can see, the height of Zartan, he would have to duck to get in. That's not terrible. If I made the house taller, that would have been better, but you still get the sense of sort of a swamp house, out there in the middle of the swamps somewhere. It's sort of abandoned, not super clean. I'm thinking about the one where you have the Dreadnoks are arguing. Zartan throws a dart and it sticks into a picture of Cobra Commander as Cobra Commander's calling him. But that's sort of the house I had in mind as I was building this. Now, when you go down to the ground here, I purposely cut out the cardboard to have this little spot that was more like water. And then there's, it's basically just a clear piece of plastic that's got kind of ripples in it. And I'll zoom in there so you can see what that looks like. But that to make it look like, there's water out here. We have pork belly hanging out here at the edge. We've got monkey wrench here just chilling. I did put weapons for a bunch of these guys. I did put weapons in their hands just to keep it a little bit interesting. Not everybody on the in the diorama has weapons. And I use, for 90% of this, I use Gorilla Glue, and then you can use this Elmer's glue too. It's not really that different as far as the quality of what it does. And then you can see over the side here, I've got like a tree coming out. There's a little bit of moss hanging down. This moss I did buy at someplace like Hobby Lobby, I think. It's a little bit more expensive than I'd want it to be, but I wanted to mix it up and give that a shot. So, but I wanted that sense of, there's like trees falling down. It's sort of falling. It's a worn area. It's not a well-refined area. Let me zoom in here so you can see. That's what the water looks like. And I think I just painted it black underneath so it would get a little bit of that swampy feel. But it's just it's It's a material that's basically wavy right on top, and I just glued it down. I do want to note here, I'll back up, on the edge here, this is where the corrugated cardboard would show. I just glued wood, and then down here the moss overlaps, and then a rock here, and then the moss overlaps as well. So you don't see any of the peeking through there a tiny bit, you can. But just, you know, adjust this a little bit, and you're not going to see much of the cardboard coming through at all. You can see I made sort of a little landing there, and I just got those sticks in the woods. Very simple. I glued them on these, let's see, the cross pieces that are here, and basically perpendicular to the house. And now they've got a little thing to stand on. So they could come out of the house, jump on a swamp skier, and take off. All right, we're going to call this section 2 as we work our way across. First, you can see I've got a motorcycle in the back here. I picked it up at Walmart for maybe $4 or something like that. It does fit pretty well with a G.I. Joe 1/18 scale. But I just had it there as like, hey, here's another, you know, another vehicle that they had kicking around. And actually the handle broke on this one, but I glued it back on purposefully, again, so it has that sort of worn look. Then over here, we've got Torch, Thrasher, and Buzzer. Buzzer, obviously, cutting a tree down with his chainsaw. What's the reason? You make up the story, however you want it to go. But he's got a chainsaw, so he's cutting a tree down. We got Thrasher sitting up on top of the Thunder Machine, just giving that vibe of, you know, he's just chilling and hanging out before they head out on the next mission that they're getting paid for. And then Torch here is on the other side. I do want to note that one of the things you can think about is how to position the hands of characters when you're doing a diorama. Like Torch has got his hand like resting, you know, it's like resting on the ammo for the Gatling guns. That just feels more natural than if his hands just sort of like floating in the air randomly. So that is, you know, the Thunder Machine's pulled in. I purposely did it at sort of a strange angle. It's not like it's lined up perfectly with the house. That's Thrasher. He just pulls in and parks that thing wherever he wants to. Now in the back here, I want to show you, I did buy an aquarium plant, basically just cut off the plastic base and just glue it right onto the cardboard. And then up here, you'll see a bunch of this. This is actually part of it, and then this sort of fluffy top. It's called Phragmites, occurs naturally here in the Northeast, and it looks great as just kind of a small tree, you know, sort of a little bit of a palm feel or something like that, palm tree feel. And it doesn't die out on you quickly. That's what it looks like. It's already tan. It's already got this fluffy top here. Earlier in the season, like the early spring, it'll be greener, but quickly it's going to turn to that color. So it's been up here for probably 9 months and no issues whatsoever. Give you a couple close-up shots here. So there's Buzzer doing some work. Thrasher up top. Torch down here. Dreadnok's hanging out. Similar to the other tree I showed you a couple minutes ago, this tree is just, it's a stick from the woods, and I just found something that had a couple smaller branches coming off of it, and that's what Buzzer's working on. Now, before we move on, I want to show you sort of this high angle to show you what the base looks like, right? So we've got the cardboard, and then I put Elmer's glue or Gorilla Glue and basically just wiped it all over and then sprinkled sand all over it. Then I found some rocks that were smaller, so I've got some rocks in here. I've got some of this moss. Again, you could pick this up at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. There's another aquarium plant. And then I just put some pieces of wood in there randomly. So because I knew I was going to have a vehicle there, I was going to have a couple other vehicles over this way, I knew I didn't have to perfectly cover up the everything on the ground. But you can see in the back there, it's more sandy. Up here, it's got more of the moss and stuff. But simple way to set up your actual ground for a diorama. And then let me talk about the background real quick. So this background up here is actually an aquarium background. So you can get on Amazon, type in aquarium backgrounds. You can put jungle, you can put forest, you could put desert. These are the type of things you put on the outside of your aquarium, so it makes it look like, you know, the fish is swimming through a desert or something like that. And I just cut it to size. So you cut it on the top, you cut it around the sides. This one goes on the sides of the shelf, along the back of the and on the back of the shelf as well. So again, low cost. That probably cost me $9, and my guess is that was the most expensive piece of this entire project. Next up, we got Road Pig and Zanzibar. So Zanzibar hanging out on his skiff. I like the way he looks there. He's kind of hanging out. He's still got his gun. His elbow is sort of resting there on his leg as he's watching, and he's looking this direction because we've got Road Pig over here, and then off the screen now, but we got Ripper and Naugahyde up in the watchtower. So he's looking in the direction of other action, which makes sense. He's not just staring at the ground. He's actually, you know, oh, there's people over here. I'm going to be watching them or talking with them, whatever it might be. The skiff I put here, I didn't want to put it like up on top of a ton of rocks. It's sort of in a marshy area with some of this moss because, again, the skiff, you could hop on it and, scoot through some moss and some slime, whatever, and get out into the water. Whereas if it was on top of rocks, it's not really built for anything like that. Then we got Road Pig over here hanging out with the Swamp Fire. Swamp Fire has landed. Again, the one thing I would say is that as it's landed, if these guys were gonna take off, he would hop in. They'd have to get it basically moving on the ground forward to clear, and then they could actually get the rotor start to move for the helicopter. But again, just wanted to have a bunch of their vehicles around. They're hanging out. I'll note here that where he's standing, he's not going to get hit by the rotor if for some reason it started up or something like that. I wanted to make sure that it was realistic, that they were just sort of hanging out. This guy, Road Pig, I accessorized with all his stuff. You don't have to do that, but I wanted to show it off. With Zanzibar, I thought he'll have his pistol, and we'll keep his hammer and his spear in the actual skiff. But you could swap those out, obviously, however you want to do it. Quick close-up of these guys. Last up on the end here, we have Ripper, and he's climbing up this tower. I think this is from more of the modern stuff from G.I. Joe. I'm not really familiar with where I picked it up at some point in my early recollecting, but he's climbing up this cargo net. He's got his gun in hand, and this thing has got like barbed wire on it. So I just felt like, yeah, that fits the Dreadnok vibe. And when he goes up to the top, Ripper's going to be hanging out with Naugahyde. Now, the blue you see here is not supposed to be sky. This is just the underside of a shelf. I painted all blue. So, you could paint each section of the shelf. Maybe you could paint this black, or you could keep it blue like the sky. You could put something up there. But I just want to keep the shelf all one color. And so the dioramas that I've built are just on the shelf. But I'll back this up a little bit so you can get a sense of what the overall feel of this kind of angle or this end of the diorama looks like. So now you see Ripper climbing up, Naugahyde's up there. He's got a spotlight or a searchlight up there. This thing is kind of beat up already. It's got a crack in it, which I like. Again, this sort of just, kind of old school, beat up, used, it's in the middle of the swamp look that you would have for something like the Dreadnoks. So what did this cost me? Honestly, not a lot. The cardboard I had just kicking around the house, the moss, the phragmites, the sticks, the rocks I just picked up, around the woods or around my yard. I did pay for some of this moss just to give it a shot. I don't know if I'd use a ton of it in the future. I'd probably use on other dioramas, I'll use maybe a little bit of that and then just natural moss, which you'll see in some other dioramas that I'll show you in future videos. The other moss just works fine. I did pay for the dowels to make the house. I could have just found a lot of straight natural sticks, shaved them down, and then made them into a cabin. I just want to try something different. Again, this is my first one I ever tried, so I wanted to experiment with a little bit. The challenge sometimes with the backdrop here, is that when you cut it, and then you can tack it in, you can glue it on, whatever, but it can be kind of floppy. You don't really see that because there's a lot of contours in this background here because of all the plants and leaves and different depths. But if you get a very flat, like kind of flat contour, like a sky or one sort of still image, and then it starts to sag, you're probably going to be able to see that. So just a heads up that if you do have that type of background, make sure you really get it in secure, and definitely get the background in securely before you add the rest of the diorama. Cool thing about this too is if I want to, I can get a board, slide it underneath here, and slide the diorama right out, and I could take this out into the woods. And yeah, I mean, the guys would fall over. I had to reset up the figures. But other than that, it's quite solid because everything's glued and secured into place. And yes, I did buy the aquarium plants, but I only got a few of those. One thing I did do is that with one of the plants, I just cut off the individual leaves, and I'll show you right here. I'll point, and then I'll zoom in with the camera. But right there is like an individual leaf, and you can do that relatively easily. Just snip it with a pair of scissors, and then put some glue on the end and stick it in. And because there's a bunch of moss and other rocks around, that actually will support it. You don't have to worry about it falling over. So first go at a diorama. I love the Dreadnoks. My favorite, like I said, sub-team. That's what's sort of within the G.I. Joe world. And I do have another level down here, which is I got some customs. I got some unique stuff. So I'll do another video on that soon. Stay tuned for that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Got more videos here. If you want to check out more from Third Wave Sabotage, please subscribe if you haven't done so. Like and share. That'll help grow the channel. Appreciate you guys. Hope you have a great week. Take care.